So Friday the 8th, I released an article and about the Saudi Arabian money coming into the or the Middle Eastern money coming into the esports space, and let's go through it. So let me set the scene. Let me set the stage. So we have these people who wants to get into the esports space and do what's called sports washing. Now, sports washing is a term used in, let's say, not morally grandstanding countries, or someone who are trying. It's basically some actor who's trying to get their image out there in a positive light through sports, and they're trying to use their tarnished reputation through either hosting sporting events or sponsoring teams or participating or owning teams. We see this with Manchester City, owned by the Saudi Arabians, and we see this with esports now as well. Like the latest deal was what sparked my interest in wanting to take a look at it. And it was the partnership between the Abu Dhabi-based AD Gaming, which is funded by Abu Dhabi, the government, and they are trying to get esports events in their country. So they made a 3-year long partnership. Then I went back and looked at, well, that was the obvious one as well, with ESL and FACEIT getting bought up by the Savvy Gaming Group, the Saudi Arabian-owned company. And then there was also, back in the day, 2 years ago in 2020, there was this deal that tried to happen. So Neom, it's a Saudi Arabian super city that they are trying to build and create, and they went in and sponsored the LEC and then also sponsored Blast. The direction there was quite different. Let's take a look at what happened. So first of all, it's basically about ethics and how these countries might not be what esports are trying to represent, because they have this Sharia law going on in their countries, very strict religious law towards especially females and LGBTQ plus the community there, and restricting their rights. Let me just read here. To what extent is ethics swallowed by sheer profit? Recent reports with the Saudi Arabia-owned Savvy Gaming Group buying ESL and FACEIT for $1.5 billion, together with the partnership of the United Arab Emirates owned AD Gaming and Blast, suggest otherwise. Now, with these deals, green dollar bills have turned red as blood money seeps into the esports ecosystem, which would be devastating to both the faces, the fans, and the sponsors within it, where the political message broadcasted might not be in line with the message esports itself and its actors are trying to send. The hypocrisy alone of having ESL running the female tournament, ESL Impact, is a duality of ethics that is hard to swallow. So this is basically the gist of the article. And then we're going to look at different examples throughout. So ESL and FACEIT were bought by Savvy Gaming Group. Okay, let's do it in chronological order, right? So first, what happened? Well, it was Neom who tried to sponsor LEC here back in July 29, 2020. And back then, they tried to sponsor it. They came in with a lot of money, and all the business people said yeah, this is a good idea. And Neom wrote on their own website that Neom is a new community that will be the home and workplace for more than 1 million citizens from around the world who want to be a part of building a new model for sustainable living, working and prospering in Saudi Arabia. This is something the League of Legends community were not a fan of, because they were having they have this law with the Sharia law and the suppression of LGBT plus and women in Saudi Arabia. And yes, Mohammed bin Salman is a bit more liberal than what the older regimes were, but that doesn't change the fact that there's some outdated laws in the country that could potentially affect the people traveling there, and maybe they are not safe when they get there. And then LEC posted July 29th. There was a lot of people who were not happy about this. You can just see here, everything is just yeah. Delete this ASAP. People are not happy. Okay, back then, yeah, even this guy showing like with Riot or the LEC like supporting the LGBT plus and woke capitalism and everything within that. Yeah, sure, but this is kind of counter to what they're trying to do. So let's look at the article, see what they're saying. What are the words that LEC used to back in this announcement? LEC welcomes NEOM as a main partner for the summer season. NEOM is a new community that will be the home and workplace for more than 1 million citizens from around the world who want to be a part of building a new model for sustainable living, working and prospering in Saudi Arabia. Okay, well, that's the same as we just saw on in the quote in the article, which was from the website. Now, it will include towns and cities, ports and enterprise zones, research centers, sports and entertainment venues, and tourist destinations, all designed to play a leading role in global development, and will be championing the development of esports across the world. NEOM has their sights set on the future, and to help future-proof the LEC stage, they'll be sponsoring the Oracle Lens during live broadcasts, which helps players predict the next moves a team will make. Starting from summer week 7, NEOM joins Kia, Alienware and KitKat, completing the lineup of our main partners for this season. Now, first of all, first question here is, okay, you make it sound super positive. Okay, well, Kia, Alienware and KitKat, are they fine with this sponsor? Do they want their names and their brands to be a part of this, like in the same category as NEOM? That's like the first question that comes to mind, right? Look at the date here, July 30th, an important update on the LEC NEOM partnership, okay? And you can see it's 3:35 a.m. here, 1:19 p.m. So this is like 12 hours, 13, 14 hours, right? After the announcement, this happens. Okay? Let's go and take a look. LEC ends NEOM partnership. As a company and as a league, we know that it's important to recognize when we make mistakes and quickly work to correct them. After further reflection, while we remain steadfastly committed to all of our players and fans worldwide, including those living in Saudi Arabia and the Middle East, the LEC has ended its partnership with NEOM effective immediately. In an effort to expand our esports ecosystem, we moved too quickly to cement this partnership and cause rifts in the very community we seek to grow. While we missed our own expectations in this instance, we're committed to re-examining our internal structures to ensure this doesn't happen again. Let's take a look at one of these comments that were made by one of the people in the community, in the League of Legends community. So that was Wicked. Wicked, he said, like, and he really hits the nail on the head here. Are people really surprised that LEC partnered with NEOM? Most companies do everything for business, show pride flag on the social media to increase sales, and afterwards partner with a company that goes against their shown values. Don't trust companies to represent you. Now this is where he's going in and talking a bit about the woke capitalism that we see everywhere. Like, okay, yeah, so long story short, it was ended super fast. They also tried to get in with Blast. That partnership or that sponsorship ended as well, but it took like a couple of weeks because all of the noise that the League of Legends community made translated into the Counter-Strike space. Well, that's not the end of the story for NEOM, because there was this Bedouin Huaytan, sorry for the pronunciation, but there was this tribe who lived there, and they had two towns where 20,000 of the Huaytan tribe were forcefully removed without adequate compensation. And if they didn't want to move, what happened? Well, Abdul Rahim al-Huwaiti refused to be evicted and began posting videos online. And a few days later, he was shot by Saudi forces. So basically, it's back then, so they are forcefully removing people who own their lands, so they can build this mega city. Now, the money they are using to market this mega city is what they try to sponsor and use to sponsor LEC and Blast. And this is where the sports washing concept comes in again for this story. So yeah, it's a pretty old story, 2020. Okay, let's move up to a more recent news. Savvy Gaming Group, ESL and FACEIT were bought. Now, what was the community reactions? There was no real community reactions. Like, there was no outrage. There was no, like, we didn't, like, what we saw with Neom was, like, this superpower that esports has, which is, it can remove, like, the barrier. Like, there's not a natural wall between, like, professional and talent and the fans. It's not, like, it's easier to get in communication and get an impact and get the attention of professionals in the esports space and talent in the esports space rather than football or any other traditional sport. Now, with this bridge being like this wall being almost invisible, right? You have the effect that the community was not a fan of the sponsorship. We have the talent that was not a fan of the sponsorship. We had players, and then suddenly, because of all this noise and all this, like, this shitstorm that came over LEC, they were forced to remove the sponsorship, and then this force of power made it into the CS:GO space. So two vastly different games, but it was still there, and the impact was felt on both sides. Now, this impact, like this superpower, was not used here. People didn't really care about the ESL and FACEIT getting bought by SSG. Mohammed bin Salman is the chairman of Neom. He's also the chairman of Savvy Gaming Group. So it's the same man. Like, he's the crown prince of Saudi Arabia. He's the guy running everything down there, right? It's the same. Like, it's basically the same guy trying to do it again, do the sports washing. This time it worked because MTG wanted to sell ESL for years. They bought FACEIT with it as well, SSG. What's happening in Saudi Arabia is to uphold this Sharia law. They have a group of volunteers called Mutawas. They are these volunteers are have these. They have the Sharia law, right? In Saudi Arabia does not have the same law in the different parts of the Middle East. It's like they have their own interpretation of the law, which means the law in Saudi Arabia is different from the one in Abu Dhabi and different in the United Arab Emirates and in the different places in the Middle East, right? So that's something you have to consider when you travel there. Something you need to read up on if you want to travel there as a fan. Okay, well, what else is the Mutawa are likely to cause problems for any women they deem to be wearing too much makeup or showing too much flesh, and they let me read here. This rule of enforcement differs depending on which legislative part of a country you are visiting in the Middle East. Furthermore, in Saudi Arabia, LGBT plus relations are illegal, which can lead to flogging, jail, and death. Okay, well, so if you are a fan and you're traveling to an event in Saudi Arabia and you're LGBT plus, you might fear for your life while you're down there. Saudi Arabia are explaining it as LGBTQ travelers are unlikely to experience any problems in the country as long as they act discreet and respect local laws and customs. Yeah, sure, makes sense. But you cannot show public displays of affection as well. There are some laws according to Amnesty. Basically, I summed it up here. So basically, what it says there is the country imposes bans on travel, public speaking, resumption of human rights work, and use of social media. Now, some of these have been lifted and are not as strict, but it's still there are still some of these old laws that are in place. So just because they are not enforced, they're still there, which is a super important thing to think about. Like, Saudi Arabia also abstained from the United Nations vote for adopting the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, saying it contradicted the Sharia law. Now, all of these things of Saudi Arabia, these are the people where the community in 2020, when they started in League of Legends, they were really against it. But they went 2 years later into CSGO, nothing at all happened. So they are just running wild and free and doing whatever they want with all their millions of dollars and billions of dollars they have put into owning this company and holding the events and keeping the ecospace going, right? These money, is it worth it when you're thinking of the ethics of where they're coming from? As Lester Freeman in The Wire says, follow the drugs, they lead you to a criminal. Follow the money, and you have no idea where you're gonna end up. So always look at the check and see where it's from, and see if that is something that you or the sponsors or the actors in the space are actually complying with. We don't know if Kia or KitKat are a part of agree with Saudi Arabia and are comfortable with having their name next to them on the logos in the commercials. But also, what about these companies paying a Saudi Arabian owned company to promote their products? That's at least something to think about. Again, as I mentioned in the intro, they are still doing the ESL Impact Counter-Strike's Women Only tournament. Yeah, it's a great initiative. Yeah, it definitely is. But when it's Saudi Arabia who owns it, it's kinda like, what if? Okay, thought experiment. What if the finals of a ESL Impact tournament is gonna be on LAN in Saudi Arabia? What happens to the women then? Are they gonna travel there and everything's gonna be fine? Maybe, but there's also the potential of the suppression of their freedoms and their human rights that can affect them. Which means that if they want to compete and this happens, they have to risk their safety to compete at the highest level. And what about LGBTQ plus? What about those? Because we have people who are casters or who are players who are either in the closet or open about it, right? But what if they have to go to an event in Saudi Arabia and cast there? Well, they have to risk their safety as well. So this risking of safety, is that really worth it for you to be able to work in esports? That's at least something to think about. The partnership with Blast and ADG is a bit different, because here you have it's not really you didn't it wasn't bought up. It's something they actively chose, right? They Blast announced a 3-year-long partnership with ADG, who's funded by Abu Dhabi, the Abu Dhabi government. With this announcement, Blast Premier World Finals will be held in Abu Dhabi in December of 2022. Now, why is it that this is something why is this bad? Well, all of the before mentioned stuff, right? But another thing, the Sharia law is different in the United Arab Emirates than it is in Saudi Arabia. What about the fans coming there? Are they safe? So that's something really to think about. And I reached out to OW, who's a former pro player and a member of the LGBT plus community, who says that I'm obviously not surprised. I don't think it has any significance for the CS scene in any way, when it already is LGBT plus hostile. There's a long way yet, and we're talking sadly several years before we see a significant change. Well, this is not a good change in that sense. When we talk about ethics, this is not what we are trying to send a message of. So to go a bit deeper, now this is a lot about the players and the talent, but there's also a conflict for the organizations, because not all organizations, some of them live and die by their CSGO teams, right? Others are so big that they have a lot of revenue from other scenes and other esports that it's not a problem for them, okay? Well, let me read here. Esports organizations are in a situation of having to compete in tournaments which are partnered with or owned by controversial entities. The partnership and ownership of these tournament organizers have come through Faustian bargains, with the money that comes in overshadows the ethics of the deals. This leaves esports organizations in a position, in some cases, if they want to survive, they have to compete or turn the key on their CSGO projects. So either they say, okay, we're gonna live with this, we're gonna live with the money that's coming in for our own living, for us to keep going as a company. And if you say no, well, you cannot compete in CSGO, because ESL owns 80% of the calendar and Blast owns the last 20 or something like that. But it's basically they are the two main companies. It's the same as if LEC was let's say the LEC was bought up by the Savvy Gaming Group. Well, you can only compete in the LEC in League of Legends on the highest level with the world seats and everything. So then again, now you suddenly have in this thought experiment, right? You have organizations who has bought a franchise slot for $10 million, who would then come in and be forced to work under this owner, or they're gonna have to try and sell it. Then it's like a polished pile of shit, right? Yeah, it's pretty, but it's still shit, right? You don't know where, like, you're not gonna get rid of it unless you have these people who don't really care about ethics and just want to earn money. And this is something that we see because with the community outrage of the Niem example, you have no idea, like, it was the community who stopped it, right? This means that the ethics are not a part of the negotiations when it's behind closed doors and the important people or like the higher ups in the companies are making these decisions. Remember, Blast tried to do this once, failed because of the community. They got it the second time around. So they actually got the blood money that they actually tried to get the first time around. They got it the second time around. Now, Kenneth Kortsen, who's a PhD in sports economist, and one of the leading sport economists in Denmark, I asked him for a comment, and he reached out and said, as we have seen with other sports, several countries have also started investing in esports. Here, of course, sports organizations need to think about where the money comes from and what they want to be associated with. Because sport has become a platform through which certain countries nurture geopolitical interests and use soft power sponsorships. Sport has thus become the subject of sports washing, where the image of these countries are polished with the help of the sport's popularity. This is something like I mentioned a bit earlier as well, but this all ties everything together, right? So you must think, well, there can't really be more about this story, right? Well, there's a civil war going on in Yemen right now. And what is happening in Yemen? Well, quarter of a million people have died. It started in 2015. 10,200 children have been killed or injured. Just some quick stats, right? It's horrible, right? It's really horrible. On the one side, you have Iran, who's supported by Russia, or the Shia North, the north of Yemen, who's supported by Russia and Iran. You have the south, who's supported by Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, America, and more. Now, just a little twist on here, right? ESL right now has the sponsor, has the U.S. Air Force as a sponsor. Saudi Arabia and United States of America are working together to help one part of a civil war that's been going on for 7 years. Another thing, they are actively endorsing this. They have the sponsorship. So the U.S. Air Force is helping the United Arab Emirates to do what they do in the south, right? To support the south in Yemen. The south had allegedly made Yemenis people had allegedly made secret deals with Al Qaeda. Now, Al Qaeda is not a new name if you have heard anything about all the Afghanistan wars and everything that's been going on down there. The secret deals were made was about Al Qaeda was asked to leave key cities and towns, and then would let others retreat with weapons, equipment, and wads of loaded cash from as the Associated Press found out in an investigation. There's alleged ties to a terrorist organization. They are actively a part of a civil war that's killed over 250,000 people, including 10,200 children. They have an active sponsorship in esports through ESL. Any alarm bells? No? Well, okay then. So this leads to ask, well, how much are we willing to pay to see our favorite players shoot heads in a video game? How much compromise are we willing to make to let this happen? Because this is something absolutely terrifying to think about. Because the esports community and the highest level have lacked money, because there was a lot of VC funds that came in with especially North American organizations. So they had a lot of money, right? So they bought, they signed a lot of players and inflated their salaries. When they inflate the salary, it goes on all industry wide. Okay. So if you want the great players, you have to pay the big bucks. When then the VC money starts running up, you suddenly just have a lot of expenses, right? You have a lot of expenses with not a lot of income coming in, because the esports community is used to getting everything for free. They are not used to earning money or paying for watching tournaments. Not even something as little as $5, a Twitch subscription to watch an ESL tournament, like IEM Cologne. That's like the greatest event there is on the calendar right after the majors. People don't want to pay for that to watch it online. Another thing, fans do not buy a lot of merchandise. People do not, they don't really use, they don't really use their spending power because they're used to getting everything for free. So where's the money coming from? Well, right now, the money for the organizations that's paying the salaries of the players is coming mainly from sponsorships. But sponsorships cannot pay these insane inflated salaries alone. So this is something that suddenly has left a big gap for every actor involved, because the tournament organizers had to pay for like flights and pay for accommodations when the players are at their events, right? Hotels, food, whatever. The organizations has to pay a ridiculous amount of salary and for the flights and everything, right? And the infrastructure within the team or within the organization to help the team perform in the best possible way. Well, the tournament organizers also have to pay, have to get the highest amount of prize money available for them to be able to get all the great teams to play on their events. Suddenly, there isn't really the money didn't work out. You follow the money, it says it's a bubble. We're not gonna it's not feasible, it's not sustainable in the long run. So here comes the blood money and Saudi Arabia and says, hey boys, we can fix this little dilemma you have. So just let us give you some of our money and then it shouldn't be a problem, right? Well, technically, not really technically. The big elephant in the room, the real problem is the ethics. And we haven't even talked about the potential of if some of the sponsors do not agree with or don't want their names associated with the Middle East and the governments, right? Because that's a potential where those money is going to leave the scene and leave the space, which only leads the blood money left. As I asked about in the article here in the end, I'll just read the last paragraph here. These are the peoples who our industry is making Faustian deals with. People who have restrictive rules and humanitarian violations, war crimes, and alleged association with Al-Qaeda. But that oil money sure tastes good, doesn't it? This leads to the question of the previously mentioned superpower esports has over other entertainment and sports industries. Is it lost? Why has the reaction been so underwhelming when just a couple of years back the industry was outraged by the same money entering the space? This time the strategy from the Savvy Gaming Group and the AD Gaming was to start in Counter-Strike, as their reaction wasn't on par with that of the League of Legends community in the previous mentioned Neon deal. The Counter-Strike fans went along with the bandwagon after the League of Legends community sparked the outrage, as we talked about earlier. As long as the fans can watch their favorite players shoot heads in video games, it doesn't matter where the money comes from, right? With the vast amount of controversial money being washed in these deals, it all leads back to the title and is a proof of why profits is the only language spoken in esports, where you can have ethics if you can afford it. So when did we start not to care? We did it before, we can do it again, and should so because we owe it to those whose lives have been wronged by these people. We owe it to the community, we owe it to esports. There's a short breakdown of why this is not a good thing, why you cannot always follow the money, see who gives it to you, think if you are in line with what they represent, the people who give you the money, and then you can think about it afterwards if that's something you really want. And if you want, and if you accept the money, you also accept the values that the money, where the money comes from. So if you enjoy content like this, join the discussion over in the Discord in the description below, or join the Patreon and support the work that I'm doing. And thank you for watching.